What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the ROG Allies Ultimate Power Saver and Performance Guide. Now, of course, before starting any of these tests, naturally, you're going to have to enable Radeon Chill and disable CPU Boost to get that extra boost of battery life with each of these titles that we're testing today. And for me personally, with the ROG Ally, the most important factor about it is how many games it can play. If it can play most, if not all the games I throw at it, then I feel that's an accomplished handheld. But there are other people that believe battery life is more important for a handheld than how many games it can actually play. Now, I do agree with this to some extent, but we can, as two groups, meet in some kind of middle ground. And with my previous Power Saver and Performance Guide videos for the ROG Ally, I did provide a tutorial on exactly how to change your TDP wattage and basically just your power draw in your ROG Ally to get the maximum amount of battery life and also performance. I'm going to be providing the maximum battery life and which wattages and settings are best for that, and also which wattages and settings are best for the best performance with the best battery life, because I know there are people out there that just want a 1080p handheld device with all the bells and whistles displaying the absolute best quality with their Ally. And getting started, the first title is one of my favorites. It's a game that I've been playing for more than a decade, and that is DMC Devil May Cry. I managed to get a maximum of 3 hours and 30 minutes, and I set the TDP to 8 watts. Now somehow, setting this to 8 watts instead of 7 provides you with an extra 10 FPS boost. And I know it's because of the Z1 Extreme CPU inside that doesn't allow the TDP to be too low. But at 8 watts, you can set the resolution to 1080p with ultra settings. And in most cases, you'll get 35 to 45 FPS, which is magnificent because this game will last 3 hours and 30 minutes, and that's with 1080p. Now, with 720p, you can probably get close to 4 hours. But of course, to each his own when it comes to resolution. I prefer DMC Devil May Cry at 1080p because it looks absolutely incredible, even by today's standards. DMC Devil May Cry still holds up. But with that said, moving on to the next game. This is a title that has been giving some people trouble, and this game is Burnout Paradise. If you want to play Burnout Paradise without any crashes, pun not intended, because every time you crash in this game, the game crashes as well, which I find kind of ironic, but also that puts a little more on the line while you're racing. But of course, with Burnout, you're going to crash a lot. So in order to not get this game to crash whenever you do crash in-game, simply disable Steam Overlay. And if that doesn't work, make sure to turn off the webcam setting in the game settings, as well as the graphics settings to medium, if disabling Steam Overlay doesn't work for you. But if that does work for you, you'll be able to play Burnout Paradise for 4 hours at 8 watt TDP with the resolution set to 1080p at high settings. And you'll be able to get 45 to 60 FPS with Burnout Paradise. Now there you go. You got the fix for Burnout Paradise that for some reason people didn't see online but instead decided to post it on YouTube. I'm pretty sure they eventually found the answer to that. But if you didn't know how to fix Burnout Paradise, there's your fix. And the next game is a game that I talked about recently, and that is the Callisto Protocol. I've been playing this game to death, and I managed to get a maximum of 2 hours and 30 minutes, somehow with the TDP set to 18 watts. I'm not sure how that gives me more battery life than 15 watts. Actually, I know exactly how it does. The other settings with the TDP prevent the Ally from going into the 20 watt range like 15 watt or performance mode does. So if you set it to 18 watts with the maximum being 18 watts, you'll actually save a lot of battery opposed to actual performance mode. And that's why I call this performance minus mode, because it is, as the title says it is, it's like performance mode with slightly less wattage at certain instances. But you'll get more steady performance because the TDP isn't fluctuating between 15 and 20. So I do think that setting it to 18 does provide a smoother experience with Callisto Protocol. And the resolution was set to 900p at all times, because setting it to 1080p can look incredible in certain environments, but performance-wise, it's just not acceptable in most. And the settings were surprisingly set to high. If you want to set the settings to medium and make the game kind of look like how it does with the Steam Deck, then you can do that. But if you want to get the full resolution and just the full experience with every detail in this game, then you're going to want to set the graphic settings to high. And with everything, the FPS fluctuated from 30 to 50. But I find in most places, the FPS is 35 to 50, especially if you set your TDP to 18 watts. And the next title on the list is a game that countless people have been talking about, and that is none other than Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, Resident Evil 4 Remake is optimized extremely well, especially at this point post-launch. So I actually managed to get 3 hours with Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that's with setting the TDP to 11 watts, high settings, and the resolution at 900p, and with FSR2 set to quality. And for the most part, I managed to get the FPS to hover around 40 to 45 average. But if you want to play with higher quality and with enough battery, by setting the TDP to 14 watts, you'll get around 2 hours and 20 minutes, and that is at the resolution of 1080p with high settings and FSR set to balanced. And you'll actually get 60 FPS out of this. In most locations, I'd say from 50 to 60 FPS with these settings. But if you want to get the maximum amount of battery with Resident Evil 4 Remake, I managed to get 4 hours with 9 watts, low settings, and the resolution set to 720p, and the FSR set to performance mode. And you'll get an average of 40 FPS with these settings. Now, I think playing Resident Evil 4 Remake for 4 hours is a big deal, especially on a handheld, and a handheld that is a Windows handheld nonetheless. So with that accomplishment in mind, let's move on to a slightly less high-profile game. And that game is oddly Dark Sector. Now with this game, I easily managed to get 4 hours with the TDP set to the minimum 7 watts, with a resolution set to 1080p with max settings, and I managed to get 45 to 60 FPS on average with Dark Sector. Now, I love this title. It was the Resident Evil 4 after Resident Evil 4, strangely enough. It took everything that Resident Evil 4 was and just made it look prettier with different kinds of biological weapons. In fact, there's one biological weapon that's attached to your arm, which gives you the ability of summoning a glaive, which is this humongous boomerang-like blade that you can throw at people, charge, and just combine elemental abilities with. Dark Sector is an exceptional game that was overshadowed by the older title, Resident Evil 4 Original. Even though it came out after, Dark Sector was a game that has been in development for so long, and it ended up becoming a game called Warframe that I'm sure a lot of you know, but it's kind of the original Warframe. And apparently they're making another single-player Warframe-like game that has some attributes similar to Dark Sector, which I can't wait for. But yeah, if you haven't checked out Dark Sector already, you could play it for 4 hours on the ROG Ally without any kind of compromises. And the last game on the list was a huge surprise when it was announced a couple years back. And I'm still not over the fact that Devil May Cry 5 has released officially, and it gave everybody the badass Demon Slayer that they all wanted. The one-liners, even if he stabbed right in the face, and the best female characters of any video game. Dante's mom, oddly clad with skimpy clothes, and a girl called Lady, so basically a girl called Girl. But somehow, this is better than DMC Devil May Cry, and having Dante look accurate to the people that actually play him. I'll stop. With Devil May Cry 5, I managed to get 3 hours and 30 minutes. And yes, you heard that right. All you have to do is set the TDP to 8 watts, with most graphical settings in-game set to high, but specifically the rendering mode set to interlaced. Now the game doesn't look all that different. Maybe their hair will look slightly choppier if you look very close. But besides that, the game basically looks the same with a 30% performance boost if you set the rendering mode to interlaced. Now a lot of people somehow don't know about this option, but I found this out early when I was trying to play Resident Evil 2 Remake with my 1080p laptop. Interlaced is a lifesaver, but of course you're setting the TDP to 8 watts, so interlaced won't exactly be enough if you want to reach those high FPSs. You'll have to set the resolution to 720p, and with that you'll get around 40 to 55 FPS, which is enough for a third-person action title like Devil May Cry. Even 40 FPS is enough for this game, but you'll manage to get 55. If you want to limit the FPS, you can do so by turning on the FPS limiter in Command Center, and you could limit it to a minimum of 30, or you can even boost it up to 45 to get that extra bit of smoothness in your gameplay. But of course, that's the maximum amount of battery you can get with Devil May Cry 5 on the ROG Ally, with the maximum amount of FPS included. If you set the TDP to 11 watts with high settings, and of course the rendering mode turned to interlaced, with the resolution set to 1080p, you can actually get a maximum of 2 hours and 45 minutes with Devil May Cry 5. And in most cases, you'll get an FPS of around 40 to even 55, just like with the last settings, but with a lot higher resolution thrown into the mix. But yeah, there are so many power saver and performance guides that I'm going to be working on in the future, but that's specifically all for this list today. Now, if you have any other games you want me to test, let me know in the comments below. And because I've been working on different types of videos, specifically for the ROG Ally, I wasn't able to test as many games as I wanted to, but hopefully the games I provided and the settings I provided are enough for you for now. And I hope you guys enjoy the video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a good one. Later.